Today's Daf is Samech Aleph. We're starting 7 lines from the top with the new piece at the 2 dots, where it says V'chen ba'echal v'chen ba'mizbeach. So what this is speaking about is, again, going back to the issue of what happens if something goes wrong in the middle of these the service that we read about, the very detailed applications of the blood, of the par, and sa'ir, of the bull and the goat. So Tanura Banana Braita is quoted, V'chiperet Mikdash HaKodesh. So there's a pasuk that is embedded in the whole story, in the whole account of the service of Yom Kippur. Towards the end, it says, V'chiperet Mikdash HaKodesh. He will atone for Mikdash HaKodesh, the holy sanctuary, V'yat Oel Moed, and the tent of meeting, V'yat HaMizbeach Yechaper, and he will atone for the Mizbeach, the altar, V'yal Kohanim, and on the Kohanim, V'yal Kol Am HaKahal Yechaper, and on the entire Am HaKahal, people of the congregation, he will atone. So it repeats several times that he's going to atone for different things. Mikdash HaKodesh, Ohel Moed, Mizbeach, Kohanim, Am, Kahal. So we have to understand what are these different phrases coming to include. V'chiperet Mikdash HaKodesh, Zelifnai V'lifnim. When it says Mikdash HaKodesh, the holy sanctuary, it's referring to the Kodesh HaKodeshim, that really the whole concept of, or much of the concept of Avodat Yom Kippurim is purifying not just the Jewish people from their avonot, from their sins, but also purifying the Beit HaMikdash, because we're unworthy, so to speak, of having the presence of Hashem in our midst. We have to do a kapara for the Beit HaMikdash itself. So if one is for the Kodesh HaKodeshim, Ohel Moed Zehechal. Ohel Moed refers to the enclosed and roofed part of the Beit HaMikdash, which is known as the Hechal. In other words, not the Kodesh HaKodeshim, but the second level, the Kodesh, is the Ohel Moed. Mizbeach Kemashma'o. We know what the Mizbeach is. We don't need an explanation of what the altar is. We know what the Mizbeach is. That's what it means literally. Yechaper, the extra word Yechaper. It says Yechaper several times. V'chiper, and then it says Yechaper again, and then it says Yechaper again. It's emphasized. Atone, atone, atone. So what is this? What is the first mention? Or I should say the second mention of Yechaper, the first superfluous one, is Elu Azarot. This comes to include purifying. Not only does this service purify and atone for the Kodesh HaKodeshim, for the Kodesh, for the altar, but also for the Azarot, also for the courtyards. And then it says HaKohanim, Kemashma'an, we understand. Kohanim means the Kohanim. Amma Kahal, what is the people of the congregation? Elu Yisrael. These are the Jews. Yechaper, the extra word Yechaper at the end, the Elu HaLevi'im, to come to include the Levi'im. So basically this includes the entire Jewish people and the entire edifice of the Beit HaMikdash. Hushvu kulan lechapara achat, shekulan mitkaperin b'se'ira mishtaleach b'shar averot, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That everybody is included, according to Rabbi Yehuda, in one kapara, the se'ira mishtaleach. Now what's the issue here that's going on? There are 2 sin offerings that are brought on Yom Kippur. One is the se'ira mishtaleach. It's not really a korban, it's thrown out of the Beit HaMikdash. It's the one that's chased away or thrown over a cliff. The se'ira mishtaleach is the one that the Kohen actually he confesses all of the sins of the Jewish people on the Se'ira Mishtaleach. So it covers all Averot for the Jewish people. But then remember, the Kohen himself has a par. The par of the Kohen, the bull, which is a kapara for him and for the Kohanim. Because when he does a vidui, he does his confession over the bull, he says, this is for myself and for all of Am Kedoshech, right? The Kohanim Am Kedoshecha. Remember that he says that vidui, that confession where he confesses not only for himself but for the Kohanim. So what does that mean? So that it raises an issue. Which one of these 2 korbanot, is it the se'ira mishtaleach, the scapegoat that's called in English, right? Is that the one, since it covers for the entire Jewish people, does it also include the Kohanim? Or no, the Kohen Gadol, when he does the vidui, when he does the confession over his bull, he says, this should be for me and also for the Kohanim. So maybe they're included in that one. They don't need the se'ira mishtaleach. Which one are they on? Which are the rest of the Kohanim on? So Rabbi Yehuda says that the rest of the Kohanim and the Levi'im, everybody really gets their kapara from Se'ira Mishtaleach, from the scapegoat that's sent out. However, Rabbi Shimon disagrees and says, Kishem shedam ha'sa'ira nasa bifnim mechaper al Yisrael betumat mikdash v'kodashav, kach dam ha'par mechaper al ha'kohanim betumat mikdash v'kodashav. That just like remember, there are 2 se'irim. There is the goat that is sent out to Azazel, and there is the goat that is offered as a korban. So we have, what is the purpose of each of these? The goat that's offered as a korban, the se'ir l'Hashem, is mechaper al mikdash v'kodashav. It's mechaper, the kapara, the atonement that it offers is for any defiling of the Beit HaMikdash that occurred in the past year, as opposed to the se'ira mishtaleach, the one that's sent out, which is atoning for all other averot that the people did. Okay, that's so. Just like there are two kaparot there for the Jewish people. Okay, kach dama par mechaper al kohanim betumat mikdash v'kodashav. So too the blood of the par. In other words, just like the blood of the sa'ir that's done as an actual korban, that atones for the Jewish people for their defiling of the Beit HaMikdash. So too the blood of the bull of the Kohen atones for the Kohanim when they have defiled the Beit HaMikdash by accident over the past year. Ucheshem shevidui shel se'ira mishtaleach mechaper al Yisrael b'shar averot, kach vidui shel par mechaper al Kohanim b'shar averot. And just like the confession that the Kohen Gadol makes over the se'ira mishtaleach, the goat that is sent out to be destroyed, that kapara is for the Jewish people for all other averot. So too, when he does a vidui, when he does a confession over the bull that he brings, that is mechaper, that is a kapara, an atonement for the kohanim for their averot. So in other words, just to make it simpler, Rabbi Shimon says that there is a parallel here. Okay, we have two seirim, two goats for the Jewish people, and we have a bull for the Kohanim. Goat number one for the Jewish people, the one that's offered, the one that the blood is sprinkled inside that we've talked about, that is atoning for any trespassing on the Beit HaMikdash that they've done. Goat number two and its confession is covering for all their other averot. And for the Kohanim, the bull blood that's brought in is mechaper, that's atoning for all of the averot that the Kohanim did in connection with the Beit HaMikdash, the purity and the holiness of the Beit HaMikdash, and the confession that Aharon does, or the Kohen Gadol does, over the bull, covers for all other averot. So in other words, what is accomplished with two sacrifices for the rest of the Jewish people, because they have two goats, is accomplished with only one for the Kohanim, which is the par. In other words, according to Rabbi Shimon, the Kohanim do not need the goats. They're not for the Kohanim. The Se'ira Mishtalech doesn't include the Kohanim, according to Rabbi Shimon. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there's a difference. In other words, everybody is included in the Se'ira Mishtalech, according to Rabbi Yehuda, including the Kohanim. And the only difference between Kohanim and everybody else is the kapara that relates to the Beit HaMikdash. That the par, the bull, covers for mistakes that the Kohanim have made with the Beit HaMikdash, and the other goat covers for mistakes that the Jewish people have made with the Beit HaMikdash. But in terms of all other averot, everyone is on the Se'ira Mishtaleach. Everybody is on the other goat. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon says, no. The two goats are only for the Jewish people, excluding the Kohanim. One is for mistakes with the Beit HaMikdash, one is for all other mistakes. And the bull includes everything for the Kohanim, both the mistakes that they made with the Beit HaMikdash and all other mistakes too. So Rabbi Shimon says that the Kohanim don't need the Seirim. The goats are not relating to the Kohanim at all. So Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, V'chila mikaperet HaKodesh, another pasuk that we saw earlier. He finished the whole pasuk is v'chiper. It says v'chiper ala kodesh mitumot bnei Israel. I'm sorry, no, it's not that one. V'chila mikaperet hakodesh. That he finished atoning for the kodesh v'yat oil moed, and for the oil moed for the tent of meeting v'yat hamizbeach and the mizbeach. Okay, so what are these three phrases referring to? V'chila mikaperet hakodesh. He finished atoning for the kodesh. Zeh lefnai v'lefnim. This is talking about when he finished the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Oel Moed Zehechal. Oel Moed refers to the Kodesh, not the Kodesh HaKodeshim. And Mizbeach Kemashma'o. And when it says Mizbeach, that means the Mizbeach. So in other words, it's referring to the three stages that the Kohanim did, that the Kohen Gadol did. One is the Kodesh HaKodeshim, then he comes out and he does the Kodesh, where he sprinkles on the Parochet, and then the Mizbeach, the inner altar, the golden altar that he applies the blood. The three stages that we've talked about up till now. So each one, Milamed Shekulan Kapara, that each one of them is shekulan kapara bifnei atzman, that each one is a separate kapara in its own right. Okay? In other words, the Kodesh HaKodashim stage is one entity. The part in the Parochet is one entity. In the Kodesh, where he sprinkles the blood on the curtain, that's another entity. And the placement of blood on the golden altar is a separate entity. What's the significance of that? Mikan amru, from this we said, or they said, Natan miktzat matanot shebifnim v'nishpach adam, that if the Kohen Gadol is in the Kodesh HaKodashim and he starts sprinkling the blood and the blood spills, yavidam acher v'yatchil batchila, that if he messes up in the middle, he's in the Kodesh HaKodashim and he says achat v'achat, achat ushtayim, achat ushlosh, whoops, spilled all the blood. So what does he have to do? This is Rebbe Meir talking, by the way. According to this, what does he have to do? Bring another par, do it over, and he has to actually, really, like we said yesterday, he would have to bring the ketoret again, and then slaughter another par, and bring the blood, and start from the beginning of, he can't say, I was up to achat v'shalosh, so I'll just do achat v'arba, achat v'chamesh, achat v'shesh, achat v'sheva. He can't do that. He has to start from the beginning again. That's Rabbi Meir. Why? Because each one of these stages is a thing in its own right. Okay? So that means it's one entity. One entity means two things. It means that if you're in the middle of stage 2, if you're in the middle of the parochet and the blood spills, you don't have to go back into the Kodesh HaKodashim.
But there's a machloket.
Right, well, no, but there's only a machloket internally. Meaning to say that there are 3 stages and each one has parts. If you finish the Kodesh HaKodashim successfully, and then you come to the parochet and then the blood spills, you don't have to go back into the Kodesh HaKodashim again, because that's finished. But if you're in the middle of the parochet, you have to start all over from the beginning of the parochet again. Right? So each one you have to start from the beginning. According to Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Omrim, Eino matchila b'makom shepasak. According to Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, you don't start all over again. You start from wherever you left off. If you left with achat v'shalosh, you continue with achat v'arba. True, you have to slaughter another par again. You have to get up to that stage again. But once you get to the blood applications, achat v'arba is where you left off. That's where you continue. Gamar hamatanot shebifnim. Again, you finish the Kodesh HaKodashim v'nishpach adam, and then you spilled the blood. In other words, you were doing the parochet. You were doing stage 2. Yavi dam acher. You have to bring more blood. V'yatchil b'tchila b'matanot sheba'hichal. And then you have to apply the blood to the parochet. Natan miktzat matanot sheba'hichal v'nishpach adam yavi dam acher. If after applying the blood to the parochet the blood spilled, you have to bring new blood. V'yatchil b'tchila b'hichal. And then you're going to have to, in other words, natan. Right. So if you drop the blood before you even started, so of course everybody agrees you need to bring blood and start from the beginning of that stage. But if you were in the middle of applying the blood to the parochet, again you're going to have this machloket. So I have to bring new blood, but where do I start from? So according to Rabbi Meir, who is the Tanakh Kama, he says you start from the beginning of the parochet stage. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Amarim, again they're going to say that no, you always continue where you left off. You have to bring new blood, but you have to continue where you left off. Gamar matanot sheba'hichal, if you finished all of the matanot, all of the applications to the parochet. V'nishpach adam, and then the blood spills. V'idam acher v'yatchil b'tchila b'matanot hamizbeach. So then you're going to have to start, if you drop the blood after you finish the parochet, but before you started the mizbeach hazahav, then you need to bring new blood. But natan miktzat matanot sheba'mizbeach. If you were in the middle of doing the mizbeach and you drop the blood, then again, according to Rabbi Meir, you have to start from the beginning. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Amrim, they say that you have to begin from the place you left off. If after placing all of the blood on the mizbeach, then you drop the blood, everybody agrees that it's not me'akev, meaning even though you don't have the blood now to go pour the shirayim, the leftovers on the outer altar, it's not ma'akev. Everything that you did is kasher and acceptable. You missed the last stage, but it doesn't ruin the process. So you basically have the same machloket 3 times between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar on one side and Rabbi Meir on the other side. And the machloket can be summarized that basically the question is, are each of these units divisible? In other words, if you messed up in the middle, do you continue where you left off because it's a quantitative thing, or is it qualitative? Each one has to be one thing. So if you messed up in the middle, you have to start over again with that unit. You don't have to go back to the previous unit, but you have to start over again with that unit at the least. Okay, so that's the question. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Ushnehem mikra echad darshu. They each learn from the same pasuk. How so? Because midam chatat kippurim achat b'shana. It says he should do all of this atonement from the blood of the chatat kippurim, of the sin offering of the atonement, achat b'shana, once a year. Okay, it's actually the whole pasuk is v'chiper Aaron al karnotav achat b'shana. Aaron should atone for the horns of the altar, the corners of the altar once a year. Midam chatat kippurim achat b'shana yichaper alav l'dorotechem. It mentions it twice. Once a year he should do this. It mentions the word achat once. So what does it mean? Midam chatat kippurim achat, from saying from the blood of the sin offering of atonement one achat b'shana. Rabbi Meir savar chatat achat amarti lecha v'lo shetei chataot. Rabbi Meir says one chatat I told you, not two chataot. What is that? How is that relevant to what Rabbi Meir is saying? Chatat achat, meaning that you don't make one kapara with two behemot. What would that mean? That if you're in the middle of doing the applications of blood of Kodesh HaKodeshim, and you go and you drop the blood, now you have to bring new blood, then you would be, and if you continue from where you left off, that means that the process was completed with two different korbanot. And it has to be one korban. Achat b'shana means it has to be one korban, which means if you messed up in the middle, you have to start all over again, because each unit, each process has to be done with only the blood of only one korban, not with two. In other words, they both hold that unity is the principle. Okay? But each one is looking at it differently. Rabbi Meir says each unit here has to be accomplished by one animal only. So if you spilled the blood of animal number one and you have to bring another one, you have to start all over again, so that the whole process was accomplished with one animal. The Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say the opposite. They say no, because the process can only be one, which means if you already did achat ushtayim, and then the blood spills, and now you bring new blood, if you start all over again, you're going to add achat ushtayim again. That's not right. Now you're going to end up with 11 applications instead of 8. You can't have that, because you already did 3. It has to be only one. So better that you continue where you left off with another animal's blood, then you start all over again, and you end up having additional sprinklings that you weren't supposed to have. That's the way that they learn it. Tanya, Amar Rabbi, so Rabbi said, so Tanya, it says in the Braita, Amar Rabbi said, Li chalak Rabbi Yaakov bilugin. That Rabbi Yaakov made a distinction, he gave me a distinction in log shemen of the mitzorah. When it comes to the oil of the mitzorah, we know that the mitzorah, when he would come on the day of his purification, there was a korban asham, there was a guilt offering, it's called. The mitzorah would go in and do tevilah. He would go to the mikveh, but he couldn't yet come into the Beit HaMikdash because he wasn't pure yet. So the kohen would offer the asham, he would offer the guilt offering, and then what would happen is that the mitzorah would have to put his thumb in, he would have to put his toe in, but he couldn't come in yet, so that the application of blood could be made on the finger, on the ear. Right, he would put his head in just for the ear, for the thumb, and for the toe, so the blood could be placed on there. And then the kohen would come with the log shemen, with the container of oil, and he would again put it on the ear and on the thumb and on the toe, big toe of the mitzorah. And then whatever was left of the oil, he would put on the head of the mitzorah. So this is the purification of the mitzorah. Now, according to Rabbi says, Li chalak Rabbi Yaakov belugin. That Rabbi Yaakov told me that it's not true about lugin. What does that mean? So Rashi explains on the side. Li natan Rabbi Yaakov chiluk belog shemen shel mitzorah shelo hushvu lematan damim shel Yoma Kippurim. I'm reading Rashi. He says that the oil of the mitzorah is not the same as the blood applications of Yoma Kippurim. Why? Vishanali, and he taught me lo nechleku Rabbi Meir Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon ba'avodot halukot bo sheva hazaot shebifnim umatan behonot, because something that the purification of the mitzorah has in common with Yoma Kippurim is that the oil that is going to be put onto the mitzorah is brought into the kodesh and is sprinkled towards the kodesh HaKodeshim.
What's behonot? The toe?
The big thumb, the thumb and the big toe. Behonot. So that oil is also sprayed or sprinkled towards the Kodesh HaKodeshim. That delo amrinan mimakom shepasak misham hu matchil. That when it comes to the mitzorah, everybody agrees that if the oil spilled out in the middle of applying the oil to the mitzorah, you have to start all over again. Yeah, you can't start from where you left off. Even Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon agree that you have to start all over again. This is what Rashi says. Because why? Because it says log ehad shaman, one One container of oil. Log echad amarti lecha liot kapara bo. It has to be one and not two. Like what Rabbi Meir says, it has to be with one chatat, not that you did half of the process with the blood of one animal and half with another. So here even Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon agree that when it comes to the oil of the mitzorah, if you spilled it out in the middle, you have to bring a whole new thing and start all over again. Velo, is that really true? Is it really true that the same machloket doesn't apply when it comes to the oil of the mitzorah? No. Ve'atanya, we learned in a Braita, Natan miktzat matanot shebifnim, that if he placed some of the matanot inside, in other words, if the Kohen brings the oil, first of all, he has to bring the oil of the mitzorah and he has to sprinkle it towards the Kodesh HaKodashim. If he spilled out the oil in the middle of doing that, then he has to bring a whole new log. And he has to start all over again. So there are 7 hazaot he has to do, 7 splashings, 7 sprinklings. If after number 3 he spilled it out, he brings a new container of oil and he starts from 1 all over again. But the Baraita says, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, makom shepasaku matchil. They say the same thing. He can't start all over again, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say. Just like the blood of Yom Kippur, if he messes up in the middle, he continues where he left off. So too with the sprinkling of the oil of the mitzorah, he starts where he left off according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon. If after sprinkling the oil in the hechal, the oil spills out before it's ever applied to the mitzorah, so then yavi log acher v'yatchil b'tchilat hamatanot shebabahonot. Then they bring a new container of oil and they start with the mitzorah, putting it on his thumb, his ear, his thumb, his toe, and so on. Natan miktzat matanot b'behonot v'nishpach halog yavi log acher v'yatchil b'tchilat hamatanot shebabahonot. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon amrim makom shepasaku matchil. So same issue. In other words, Rabbi Meir says if they're in the middle of putting the oil on the mitzorah and it spills, Rabbi Meir says bring a new container of oil and start all over again. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon say no. Whatever you were up to, continue from there. Whatever you were up to, continue from there. Gamar matanosh babahonot nishpach halog divrei kol matanot harosh lo me'akivot. If you put the oil on his ear lobe, on his thumb, and on his toe, and then the oil spilled, everybody agrees that taking the leftover oil and putting it on his head is not me'akev. Just like everybody agreed regarding the blood of the offering, that if after you did all the applications and you're supposed to spill the blood out on the base of the altar, if you didn't make it, everyone agrees that doesn't ruin the process. So too here, if you didn't end up pouring the leftovers on the head of the mitzorah, everybody agrees that it's okay. But what do you see here? This clearly is against what we understood from Rabbi. Rabbi said that, there's a difference. When it comes to the oil of the mitzorah, everyone agrees if you mess up in the middle, you start over. That's not true. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say, if you mess up in the middle, continue where you left off. Okay, but first the Gemara asks, Amar Mor. First, Ema li shana Rabbi Yaakov bilogin. That it's the opposite of what we understood that Rabbi meant. We thought Rabbi was making a distinction between the oil of the mitzorah and the blood of Yom Kippur. He wasn't. Li shana. That is, what he meant to say was Rabbi Yaakov said the same machloket between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon applies in both cases. Not that it was different. Not halak. Not that he distinguished. Shana, he taught. Amar Mor, the master said, Matanot Rosh and Me'akvot. Everybody agrees that after you've applied the oil to the ear of the mitzorah, to the thumb of the mitzorah, to the toe of the mitzorah, that what if it spills out before you have a chance to pour the leftovers on his head, that it's not me'akev. How do we know that? If you're going to tell me that the reason is because it says v'anotar min hashemen, that whatever's left of the oil should be placed on the head of the mitzorah, and therefore because it's called v'hanotar, it's called the leftovers, it's not that important if that's the reason. But what about this? According to that, v'hanoteret min mincha hachinami dila me'akve. Are you going to tell me that whenever it calls something a leftover, that means it's dispensable? But that's not true, because it talks about a korban mincha. A korban mincha that's brought, what do? First we take the komets. First we take a handful of the korban mincha and we offer that. And then the rest of the mincha is either offered or eaten. But the rule is that even after you take the komets and you put it in the vessel and you're about to offer it, if the remainder is destroyed or becomes tameh, you can no longer offer the korban. It is me'akev. Even though it's called v'hanoteret min mincha, even though it's called leftover, it's still necessary. If that leftover is lost, you can't do the service. So maybe here too, just because it's called the leftover oil, that doesn't mean it's not necessary. Maybe it is necessary. Gemara says, Shani Atam, it's different. Dechtiv, umiyeter vehanotar. Because here it says 2 times, umiyeter vehanotar. It says, from the leftovers. From the leftovers means it was already leftovers and it's leftover again. Right? It was already it's doubly left over. So Rashi says, Matanot behonot kiruyin shiraim. Even the putting of the oil on the ear and on the toe and on the thumb of the mitzorah is considered leftover. Why? Because first it was sprinkled in the hechal. First the oil was sprinkled towards the parochet in the kodesh. Then it's put on the mitzorah that's already left over. It's already left over from the sprinkling in the hechal, and now left over from that is the oil that was left over from the 2 sprinklings, and now we're going to put it on his head. So it's doubly left over. It's 2 steps removed from the original, and that's why it's not me'akev. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, and we turn to Samech Aleph Amud Bet, Asham mitzorah sheshechato shelo lishmo. If the Asham mitzorah, the guilt offering of the mitzorah was slaughtered shelo lishma, and shelo lishmo because it's zachar, that it was offered not for its proper purpose. In other words, the person who slaughtered it had in mind, I'm doing this for a korban olah, or I'm doing this for a korban shilamim. So as Rashi says, the first Mishnah in Masechet Zevachim, Kol ha-zevachim shenishchatu shelo lishman kisherin, ela shelo alu leba'alim l'shem chova. The rule is that if you offer a korban shelo lishma, not for its purpose, you thought that it was an olah, it was really asham. You thought it was shelamim, it was really olah. The rule is, it can be offered, okay? But it's not credited to the owner. The owner has to bring another one, okay? So here, what happens if the mitzorah brings his asham, and the kohen goes and he slaughters it thinking it's an olah? So, banu lemachloket Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. That we're going to come to the argument between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. How so? Rabbi Meir da amar yavi acher v'yatchil batchila hachanami yavi acher v'yishchot. Well, the Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon she'omrim mimakom shepasak misham hu matchil hacha en lo takana. This is Rashi's girsa, Rashi's text, and Rashi's interpretation. What does he say? How is this relevant to the argument between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon? Because Rabbi Meir says that if a person starts the process and it gets messed up in the middle, he starts over. You can always go back to the beginning. According to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, once you start the process, there's no going back. There's only continuing. So what is the issue here? So Rashi says the issue is, if you look on the side of Rashi, Damar avodah shelo nigmara, hari kemi she'ena. So, according to Rabbi Meir, anything that you start and doesn't accomplish its purpose, it's aborted in the middle. It doesn't reach its end. You start over again. It's like it never happened. We act like it never happened. However, and so too here, this asham, the mitzorah brought an asham. The kohen mistakenly offered it with the wrong intention, so it didn't count. So we start over again. It's like nothing happened. However, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon say that whenever a process is aborted in the middle, you have to start from where you left off. So he says, Alma lo amar keman deleta damya. That means that according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, when you do half of a service, we don't say that the first half is not there anymore. We say it is there. So what do you have here? You have a problem. That Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon are going to say, this is like doing it halfway. Why? Because he brought the asham. The asham was offered. The only problem was it was offered shelo lishma. Shelo lishmo is similar to starting a process but not finishing it, because it was done, it was offered, but it doesn't reach its objective, and therefore we can't erase it. In other words, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say when you start a process, you don't erase what happened. You continue where you left off. But there's only one problem here. It says keves ehad, that you can only bring keves ehad asham. You can only bring one asham. So you're not allowed to bring 2 and continue where you left off. So Rabbi Meir, who holds that when some process breaks down in the middle, you start over again, he'll say we just erase the past. It's still keves echad asham. It's like the first one never happened. The first asham was never offered. So we're starting all over again, bringing a new one. But according to Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar, a keves was already brought, and asham was brought, and it was messed up in the middle. And now we can't bring another one. So ein lo takana. He has no way to fix it. This is the way Rashi's interpretation. Tosafot comes along and asks a very good question, which is, and Rabbeinu Hananel has a totally different text here. He says, that can't be the question, because if you offer an asham shelo lishmo, you offered the asham with the wrong intent, the process didn't even start. That's not like this process starting and breaking down in the middle. The process didn't even start. How could you say that it started and it was interrupted? So that's the question that Tosafot raises, but we'll just leave that for now. But still, according to Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Meir would say in a case where the asham was brought and it was brought shelo lishmo, you just start over again, bring another one. But according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, you brought an asham and it didn't fulfill its purpose. What does that mean? You're stuck forever. You're a mitzorah forever. You can't bring another one. There's nothing we can do. This process is broke down. So now, matkif le Rav Chisda objected and said, Vaha oto ketiv. It says ve'ikriv oto le'asham, that you can only bring one for an asham. And Rashi explains on the side, ve'ikriv oto le'asham oto shehu naf imalog velo acher, that even according to Rabbi Meir, whichever korban asham was brought together with the container of oil, that's the only one that can ever be brought. The pasuk says ve'ikriv oto le'asham. Once you brought it, even if when it was slaughtered shelo lishmo, it was slaughtered with the wrong intention, and normally Rabbi Meir would say start over again, even he has to say that here there's a pasuk that tells you cannot go back and do it again. So, kashya, that's a difficulty. We don't know the answer. We don't know how Rabbi Meir would answer that. Okay, we don't know how he would answer that. But Tanya kivated Rabbi Yochanan, there's in fact a braita that supports Rabbi Yochanan. Asham mitzorah shechato shelo lishmo. If an asham of a mitzorah was slaughtered not for its defined purpose, o shelo natan midamo al gabe behonot, or if the blood never made it to the spots on the mitzorah that it's supposed to make it, hareze olah legabe mizbeach. It's treated as a korban olah v'ta'un nesachim. Since it was offered shelo lishmo, we treat it like a korban olah. It has to have all the accompanying wine and so on that comes with a korban olah. V'tzarich asham acher lahachshiro, and he needs a new asham in order to qualify him.
But doesn't it depend on when you catch the mistake? Because you might have gone through and done a different process and treated it like an asham, and then you can't say it's really an olah because you didn't do certain things, or am I wrong? It's
basically the same. What you slaughtered it, when you slaughtered it, so that's it. That's what defines it. So if you slaughtered it not lishma, you slaughtered it for something else, it becomes an olah. And now the guy has to bring another asham, it says. He has to bring it, so you continue it as if it were
anything different to it.
Not yet, but once you did the slaughtering and said, "Oh, this wasn't an olah," whoops. The Kohen says, "Oh, let's do this olah." What do you mean olah? That was an asham. Oh, whoops, I messed up. Right, so that at that stage, realizing that it was slaughtered incorrectly, so now you have to bring another one. That's what it says. Just continue that as an olah. Bring another asham. So what's the issue? So that this supports what Rabbi Yochanan says is Rabbi Meir's view, which is okay, it messed up, start over again. For Rav Chisda had objected that no, even Rabbi Meir is going to say that you can't bring another one. Amar lech, I'll say to you, my tzarich ve'en lo takana. What it means is he needs one. Yeah, he needs to bring another asham. The only thing is he can't. He'll never be able to. He botched it and you can't go back. Rav Chisda is more mahmir. He says, no matter what, if you bring that asham and it is slaughtered shelo lishmo for the wrong purpose, you can never go back. So you better be careful. According to Rav Chisda. The Gemara asks, would the Braita teach you tzarich, that the mitzorah needs to bring an asham, but he can't? Would it say he needs to when he really can't? Yes. Ve'atanya, as we learned in a Braita, nazir mimorat, a nazir who is completely bald. In other words, he has no hair at all. Now we know that it's part of the purification of a nazir is you have to shave him. So what are you going to do? Beit Shammai says, even though he has no hair at all, he still needs the razor to go over him. According to Beit Hillel, listen, this guy had never had any hair. He wanted to be a mitzorah to prohibit himself in wine and the other things. He never had any hair, so he's exempt from that part of the process. Because he never had any hair. The Amar Rabbi Avina and Rabbi Avina said, that what Beit Shammai mean when they say he needs to shave even though he has no hair? What is Beit Shammai saying? They're saying tzarich ve'en lo takana, meaning he needs to do it, but guess what? He can't do it, and that means that this guy will be stuck as a mitzorah forever. So you see that sometimes a Braita will use the term tzarich. He needs something, meaning he needs it. He just can never have it. He needs this, but he can't have it.
The halacha didn't go there.
Halacha doesn't allow him. No, because we follow Beit Hillel anyway. Upligad Rav Pedat, and this is in disagreement with Rav Pedat. Amar Rav Pedat, Rabbi Pedat said Beit Shammai Rabbi Elazar Amru Davar Echad, Beit Shammai Had Amaran. Because according to Rabbi Padat, Beit Shammai agrees with Rabbi Elazar. Beit Shammai says this, and Rabbi Elazar says, and it should say Ditnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, En lo boin yad v'boin regel, en lo taura olamit. That according to the Tanakama, if a mitzorah doesn't have a thumb or doesn't have a big toe, he can't become purified. Rabbi Elazar omer noten al mekomo v'yotzeh. Rabbi Elazar says, put it on the place where his thumb would have been. And that's enough. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Im Natan al shel simol yatzar. Rabbi Shimon says, put it on the left side, and that would be okay. So, in other words, according to Rabbi Elazar, if a person is lacking a thumb or a toe, so what you do is you just put it where it would have been. So too, according to Rabbi Pedat, Beit Shammai, when they say that this person who has no hair on their body has to be shaved to purify himself from being a Nazir, he means you have to put the razor on him, even though it's not going to take anything off. You have to go through the motion as if you were doing it, even though there's nothing there. So that's a machloket between Rabbi Pedat and Rabbi Avina. But the point is that you see that a Braita could be understood as saying tzarich ve'en lo takana. He needs this, but there's nothing we can do for him. Okay? And therefore, Rav Chisda says that if this mitzorah, if his asham was offered shelo lishmo, he needs another asham, yes, but the Gezerat HaKatuv, the Torah says you can only bring one, so he's stuck. He's never going to be able to bring one. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, when it talks about bringing the blood of the asham of the mitzorah, remember, the blood of the asham goes in two places. It's applied to the altar, and then it's also applied to the earlobe, thumb, and toe of the mitzorah himself. So you might think that you collect the blood of the asham in a vessel. Talmud Omar v'natan, but it says that the kohen places it. Man netina be'atzmo shel kohen, af lekicha be'atzmo shel kohen, which means that the kohen receives the blood in his hand, from which he is going to place it on the mitzorah. But yachol af lemizbeach ken. What about the part of the blood that goes onto the mizbeach? Talmud lomar ki kahatat ha'ashamu. But it emphasizes that the asham, the guilt offering, is like the chatat. Ma chatat te'una keli. Just like a korban chatat requires a vessel to receive the blood, af asham ta'un keli. So too does the asham require a vessel. So we have a problem. Nimtzeta ta'omer. What comes out is that you must say asham mitzorah shenei kohanim mekabelim et damo. Echad bayad ve'echad bakeli. So what comes out is that you need two people to receive the blood of the asham. One receives the blood in a keli, in a vessel. That blood is going to be thrown where? On the mizbeach, like every other korban, that the blood has to be collected in a vessel and applied to the mizbeach. However, a second kohen receives some of the blood, bayad, in his hand, directly from the animal, and that blood is the blood that's going to be placed on the mitzorah. Because you might have thought that you just collect it all in a container, you put some on the mizbeach, and then you take some of that and you put it on the mitzorah. No, it's two kabbalot. We receive it with two different kohanim. That the one who received the blood in a vessel goes to the altar. And the one that received it in his hand, he goes to the mitzorah to place it on the proper locations, the earlobe, the thumb, and the toe of the mitzorah. So now we go a little bit further here. The Vilna Gaon says it should say Tanu Rabbanan, not Tanan Hatam, but Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. V'chulan mitameim begadim v'nisrafim abetadeshen divrei Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. V'chachamim omrim en mitamein begadim v'en nisrafin abetadeshen ela acharon ho'il v'gamar bo kapara. So the question is as follows. We have situations here where we have to redo some of the stages of the process. So for example, let's say you have the so Rashi says kol aparim basirim ashnuim b'mishnatenu gabe nishpach adam lachar kapara zo ve'vi par sheni laparochet. What happens if blood of the par gets spilled? Do you have to get another blood of another par, which means you had to slaughter another one? What if the blood of the sa'ir, of the goat, gets spilled? Not only do you have to bring another goat, but you have to bring another two goats, make another lottery select the one that's going to be the chatat, slaughter it again, bring the blood again. You have to do the whole thing again because it has to be in pairs every time. So this korban, what happens to the par of the kohen after the blood is applied? The body of that par is not offered on the mizbeach. The body of the sa'ir is not offered on the mizbeach. It's burnt outside the camp. And whoever burns it, his bigadim becomes tamei, and his bigadim become tamei. That's why it says v'nisrafim bevet hadeshen. So according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, let's say 5 times he spilled the blood. So 5 times he had to bring another par. He had to bring another one. Let's say 3 times. Okay, 3. So let's say spill the blood twice. It took him 3 times to accomplish the goal. So he ended up doing 3 parim instead of 2, instead of 1 rather. So what does he do? Which one of those really is considered the par? The first one, second one, third one? Which one? What's the issue? We want to know. Now you have 3 parim in front of you. Which of these 3 has to be taken outside of the Beit HaMikdash and burnt? Which one of the 3 is going to make those who burn it become tameh? So Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say all 3 of them are equal. Now that makes sense according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, doesn't it? Because according to them, if you get interrupted in the middle, you continue where you left off, which means the first par's blood was valuable, and the second one also, and the third one also. So all 3 of them have to be taken outside the camp and burnt. All 3 of them will make those who burn it tameh. The Chachamim say no, only the last one, because the last one was the one that completed the kapara. Only the last one. Then the Gemara asks, Ba'amine Rava me Rav Nachman. Rava asked Rav Nachman the following question: Kama se'irim mishaleach? What about if the se'ir's blood, right? So if the goat's blood is dropped at some point and you have to bring another goat, what do you have to do when you bring another goat? You have to bring 2 goats again. Right? You have to select one of the 2 goats to be the chatat, then you bring it into the Beit HaMikdash, you do the application of blood, spilled it again. Shoot. Okay, now go back out, bring another 2. Right? Do the lottery, pick the one that's going to be the chatat, bring it in, and this time, finally, Baruch Hashem, I finished. So according to the Chachamim, you have both issues at play here, right? According to the Chachamim, only the last one is the one that's really the sa'ir, really the chatat. That's the real one. According to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, they would all be really. But what about the sa'ir la'azazel? You have 3 that were chosen la'azazel. Because each time you do the lottery, one gets chosen chatat, one gets chosen azazel. So which one do you pick for azazel? First one, second one, third one? Nothing went wrong with the first one. What's wrong with the first one? What's wrong with the second one? They're just standing there waiting. Well, so what do you do? So, Kama se'irim mishalech. Amar lei, Rava said to Rav, so Rav Nachman said to Rava, V'chi edrom mishalech. Are you going to send a whole flock of goats? Amar lo, he said to him, V'chi edro soref. Are you going to burn a whole flock of goats? Right? In other words, we said that all of them are going to be burnt, just that didn't we say before that all of them could be burnt? Now, according to Rava, obviously we're holding like the view, according to this, of Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, right? Didn't you say that all of them would be burnt according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon? Okay, he's asking, obviously, according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, because according to the Chachamim, you only count the last one. But Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon are counting all of them. So do they also say you send 3 se'irim la'azazel? Is that what they're going to say? He says, Midami, it's not comparable because hatam lo ketiv oto, hacha ketiv oto. When it comes to the sa'ir that is offered as a korban, that one, it doesn't say the word oto, that there can only be 1. That's why Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon said that there could be 3 that are all valid. But for the sa'ir la'azazel, it says, lishalach oto la'azazel amidbara. Only 1 can be sent to Azazel. So which one are you going to pick? The last one. Itmar, it was stated, Rav Papi mishmei de Rava Amar. Rav Papi said in the name of Rava, Rishon mishaleach. Okay, you should send the first one. Okay, so I was wrong. I said they only said 1. It doesn't say yet whether it's the first or the last. Okay, Rishonu mishaleach. He sends the first one. V'Rav Shimi mishmei de Rava Amar Acharon mishaleach. According to Rav Shimi, in the name of Rava, he sends the last one. Bishlama Rav Shimi mishmei de Rava Amar Acharon mishaleach kasavar hoil v'gamar bo kapara. We understand why you would send the last one, because that's the one that was paired with the sa'ir that in the end completed the process, right? The third time was a charm. Third time everything worked out. So that's the one you should send. Ela Rav Papi mishmei de Rav Amai kasavar savar like Rabbi Yosef. So why though would Rav Papi say that you should send the first one? Why the first one? The first one was paired with a sa'ir, and that sa'ir, it didn't work out. You spilled the blood. Second one was paired, right?
Yeah, but
second pair.
they all counted.
according to this, yeah, but they didn't complete the process. In other words, the process was only completed by the last one. So why should you go with the first one? So the answer is because he holds like Rabbi Yosei, the Amar Mitzvah Barishon. Because Rabbi Yosei says we always go with the first. Hi, Rabbi Yosei. Which Rabbi Yosei? Ilema Rabbi Yosei the kupot. If you're telling me the Rabbi Yosei of kupot, Titznan, as it says in Masachet Shekalim, Shalosh kupot shel shalosh sa'in shabehem tormin talishka vayakatuv alehem aleph bet gimel. Because it says that, remember, they would collect all the machatzita shekel in a big chamber, and they would be torminat talishka. They would take 3 boxes. They would take 1 box, 2 boxes, 3 boxes that they would withdraw from the large fund, and from those 3 boxes they would pay for the korbanot. And the boxes were written Aleph Bet Gimel in the order that the separation was made. So in other words, they would have a large quantity. They would take box 1, fill it, and put it aside. Box 2, fill it and put it aside. Box 3, fill it and put it aside. So what's the reason for lettering of Aleph Bet Gimel? Amar Vitanya, and it says in the Braita, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Lama Katuv Alehen Aleph Bet Gimel. Why do you have to have Aleph Bet Gimel? Leda Eza Mehen Nitrema Rishon Lavi Emena Rishon Shemitzvah Barishon. That he said that the reason why it says Aleph Bet Gimel is we want to know which was the first one, the first withdrawal that was made. Because we want to go with the first one. First withdrawal is always the best. So to whom, here, maybe you'll say, the first sa'ir, the first pair of sa'irim is the best. In other words, that's the one we should go with. Since the sa'ir la'azazel from the first pair, it wasn't invalidated, nothing went wrong with it, why don't we use it? But that's not necessarily a valid comparison. Why? Because dilma be'idna did hazai kamaita lo it hazai batraita. Because when the first one is ready, in other words, when the last one might not be ready. So Rashi explains, when the first box is ready to be used, the latter box might not be ready. Because you could use the first box right away, but the second and third box maybe not. The problem is like this. That Sa'ira Mishtaleach, in other words, when you withdrew the money in the first box, you could immediately use that box.
Before drawing the others.
But when it came to the Sa'ira Mishtaleach, wait a second. You had the first pair, okay, and you said, okay, this is going to be Sa'ira Mishtaleach, this is going to be Sa'ir Lashem. That Sa'ir Lashem went in and got messed up.
So it's no more fair.
So that Sa'ira Mishtaleach never really could have been sent out because the first one still hasn't worked. You brought the second one. Okay, now there's another Sa'ira Mishtaleach waiting to see if its partner succeeds, right? It didn't succeed either. So it's waiting, but it never was qualified because the damim never, the blood service was never finished. Third pair, okay, take the chatat. Okay, now there's 3 waiting for Sa'ira Mishtaleach. Now finally the damim, the service, the blood service was finished, and all 3 of them at the same time become worthy. Because none of them really could have been sent out until the blood service was done anyway. So now we have to choose, and they're all coming before us at the same time. Which one should we choose? So that's not analogous to Rabbi Yossi's case, because in Rabbi Yossi's case, when you take the money out, it immediately could be used. Here, when you designated the first Sa'ir La'azazel, it couldn't be immediately used until the process was done, and the process keeps getting messed up. Rather, Ella Rabbi Yossi de Pesach. Rather, we're talking about Rabbi Yossi with regard to Korban Pesach. What is that? Titanya, it should say, as it says in the Braita, Mafrish Pischol V'Avad. If a person chose a Korban Pesach and it got lost, it wandered away, V'frish Acher Tachtav, and then he selected another one, V'Achar Kach Nimtza Rishon. All this happened on the morning of Erev Pesach. He selected a Korban Pesach, it ran away. He selected another one, and it came back. Now he has 2. The Chachamim say he can choose whichever one he wants. It's still before Chatzot. The process hasn't started yet. He should select one or the other. Rabbi Yosei Omer, mitzvah barishon. He says it's a mitzvah to do the first one, unless the second one was better. If the second one was better, he should use that. But it's a mitzvah lavi rishon. Why? Because even though when he selected it, in other words, when the time came to bring Korban Pesach, they were both there, ra'ui, they were both worthy at the same time. Right? And when he selected them, neither of them were worthy. So it's very similar to the case of Sa'ir HaMishtaleach. Because when you selected the first Sa'ir HaMishtaleach, it was in potentia, but it couldn't really be used yet until you finish all the blood service. So it was just standing there. So it wasn't fully prepared. And it was waiting. And then when it finally was ready to be sent out, all 3 of them are standing in front of you. because now you've already selected 3 by now. When it comes to the Korban Pesach also, in the morning you selected one, it ran away, you selected another one, now they both are there, and when the time for Korban Pesach actually begins, and you have to make a commitment, they're both there. So which one now do you select? Oh, select the first one. So too, Rav Papi says he should select the first one
But if the
of the Se'irim Shalech. Right, that would be only with the Korban. But here, Se'irim Shalech, it gets thrown out anyway, so it wouldn't necessarily be true. That's in Korban Pesach, so they're making a comparison. The comparison is valid. That where you selected 2.
For the scapegoat?
No. When you selected 2, the first one takes precedence.
Okay.
So too, when you selected 2 Se'irim, the first one takes precedence, and the process is the same. When the designations were made, it was only in potentia. When the actual mitzvah came, they were both there.
But he never made it.
So now, what do you do?
They never made it because it wasn't paired with its pair. The blood wasn't offered from its pair.
Right.
Its other.
It never made it. Right. So, but its designation as Se'irim Mishtalech was never ruined.
Oh.
And it was designated.
Okay. So the answer is the first one.
So now it's a machloket in the end between the two, whether we go with the first or we go with the last. And the Gemara doesn't make a commitment here, one way or another, who wins the day. So it's not clear from the conclusion of the sugya here what the final halacha is, but there's a machloket, and each one has a compelling reason. The first one says, listen, we always give precedence to the first that was chosen, just like on Korban Pesach. Rabbi Yossi says we go with the first, and the other argument is no, that the one that was paired with the goat that actually finished the process, that is the one that should be selected.